Hey guys, welcome back to the Tough Love Podcast with Dr. John O'Connor. Today's guest, longtime friend, Anthony Codispoti. Anthony's got a long lifetime background in martial arts and is a well-established financial advisor in the area. And most importantly, he's a dear friend. Anthony, welcome back, brother.
Good to see you, my friend.
I thought this was a great way to end the year talking about wealth, warrior, and purpose, and all things that I really feel like resonate when I think of my friend and our relationship and who you are. With that being said, let's get right into it. One of the things that I see with you is discipline's a common thread on everything you do. Martial arts, financial advisory, family life, like everything's about discipline. You've built success. Where do most people completely misunderstand what real discipline actually looks like in a day-to-day basis?
As a martial artist and as a business owner, I will say I think a lot of people have a misconception of what discipline is. A lot of times people think it's like intensity, right? And where I see it as consistency. And I think if you can't have that consistency in what you do, it's very hard to layer and build. And particularly, even a skill set, like we talk about discipline for a skill set. These are things that sometimes are just layered over many, many, many years, right? And so you have to be consistent to level up.
I like that. So confidence is built, not bought. How true do you believe that martial arts, when you're working with your students, plays a huge role in the success? And I like to brag about it because you do very well in the financial advisory space, knowing that you don't have to attack, but you're able to protect. You know what I mean? That mental confidence, that calmness.
So a couple things, that's like a loaded kind of question, but I will tell you this. One of the things about confidence, I don't think people are just born with confidence. confidence comes with doing. And when you do and you accomplish, you start, building on the confidence. But a lot of times, when people do come to me, that's the one thing that they are lacking. It could be a child or it could be an adult. Because believe me, an adult can come to me with lack of confidence just as much as a child. And what I have learned is when you're in an environment like at the Phoenix Way, let's say, when you walk in and maybe you're not so confident, you start seeing and looking around the room at a room full of very confident people. And it's not always the words that they use, it's how they use those words, right? It's how, good eye contact, good voice tonality, just the presence, right? So in the beginning, people are starting to kind of almost fake it until they make it, right? They're kind of like watching what that confidence looks like, and you start to see people build off that. And then once they start coming, right, they start building a skill set until 1, 2, 3, 4 months in, all of a sudden they're like, okay, I'm not the newbie anymore, and I'm off to the races.
I like that. So one thing that I always hear when I talk to people about, the Phoenix Way and martial arts and whatnot, they think self-defense is just fighting. What does self-defense look like in finances, mindset, boundaries, and decision-making to you?
So it's interesting. 30 years in finance, 40 years in the martial arts. And what's interesting is in the financial world, people can be very emotional about their finances, right? And one of the things that we do find in the martial arts and like what you said, self-defense, one of the most important things that we bring to the table, it's not always the physical, right? So a lot of times when people are in a situation where it is, going to be confrontational, first thing that happens, the heart rate starts to build up, the adrenal stress starts to take over the body. And the number one singular thing we try to get people to understand is we have to start breathing, because it's the one thing we hold our breath and whatnot. And you see, it's the same thing. Anytime you're going to make a decision, like you walk into work and the market's imploding, right? And your clients are clamoring, they're upset, they're emotional. You have no time to panic with them. Those are the times where you need to take a deep breath. You have to just take the storm that's coming, which is people's emotions, and settle in and be confident in the decisions that I've made to protect these portfolios and kind of move forward from there. So you have to be clear, cognitive thinking.
Love it. The next question you're going to love, it kind of rolls right into that one. Calm under pressure. Martial arts teaches composure in chaos. How does that translate when markets are volatile or clients are scared? How should people apply that lesson to life?
Listen, I'm going to tell you this. I'll say it over and over and over. One of the things that I've done over the many years is I've worked with people with adrenal stress training. And it is understanding what happens to the body under the adrenal stress. It could be a low-level incident where you're startled. Maybe you go around a corner and somebody's there and you, right, you get startled. And sometimes, the heart flutters and all these things start to happen. But let's talk about like real conflict, where all of a sudden you're faced with something in front of you. It could be an armed assailant. It could be somebody that wants something from you. And all of a sudden the body goes through this chain reaction of, auditory exclusion, can't hear really well, tunnel vision, the eyes are only focused on what's in front of you, the blood starts pumping, all these things start to happen. The clarity's not there in the mind. And in that moment, you just have to remember, through training, you get back to self-regulation of breathing. Become really present in that moment. And it doesn't matter if it's a conflict, on the street, conflict in the boardroom, conflict in your home, right? Any conflict in life, you really have to take ownership, right? And you also have to become a great steward of your triggers. You got to be a good steward of your triggers, and you have to know your triggers, like what's going to upset you, what's going to get you, kind of to that point where you're just going to flip the switch and go emotional, which when you usually go emotional, shit goes wrong.
So we talk about people imploding all the time, right? They don't let it out. They don't express it. The cost of avoiding discomfort. In training, money, and life, what is the long-term cost, in your opinion, when people avoid discomfort instead of leaning into it and facing it head on?
It's interesting to me when we talk about discomfort. At the end of the day, in this, you hear this all the time. You have to live it and you got to do it, right? When you hear the old cliche, like discomfort, if you're not uncomfortable, you're never going to have this. It's like, no, at the end of the day, if you're not putting yourself under that duress, right? Really testing yourself, putting yourself in environments where you're going to learn more, right? But learning more takes effort. And a lot of people don't want to put in the effort to get there. So it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to do the hard things. And when you are doing what's uncomfortable, right, you're mucking, right? You're mucking through. And you have to get through the murky water to see the clarity of the water, and then you're like, okay, I see where I'm going, and that's when the mini successes happen, right? Mini successes become bigger successes, become huge successes, but most of the people can't get out of the murk, and even if they can start seeing the clear water, they don't want to work hard enough to start seeing really, really clear blue waters, and that's where I see the differences. And listen, it's all levels. Not everybody has to be an 8th degree black belt. Not everybody has to go and compete like you're doing, which is extraordinary. We've done extraordinary things. And, to do that, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And how am I going to muck through this and come out to the blue water?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell my clients all the time when I'm coaching practitioners across the country, they're like, how do you manage your diet and the training and everything around, for businesses? And I laughed. I said, I have so much time that it frustrates me sometimes that when people say that, and I'm like, you're just not utilizing your time properly. And the next question is what we talk about, because I'm very excited for you to be taking a hold of my finances and working direct with you as a financial advisor, is wealth built like a martial artist did it. If financial literacy was taught like martial arts, fundamentals, reps, progression, what would that system look like if you were creating it?
It's interesting because I get that question a lot. A lot of people who have come to me came to me because of the martial arts, right? They saw my discipline, they saw my connection with them, and they started asking the questions, right? So how do I equate, the martial arts to finance and vice versa? I will tell you this, I broke it down to something so basic, right? Little children's box, right? The ABCs. And I used to call it the ABCs of self-defense, which is now transferred into the ABCs of financial advising. And I will tell you this, when, for example, in the martial arts world, those ABCs is awareness. And it's not, don't walk down dark alleys at night. It's being aware of yourself, right? Being aware of what those triggers are. Being aware with, if you're under that adrenal stress, do you cower under the stress, or do you escalate issues? Or are you truly just assertive? Do you handle yourself assertively? And if you bring that one awareness to financial advisory, the verbiage is the same, right? How are you going to bring yourself to the stresses of the market? And are you doing the right things? And do you have the confidence to move forward? Then we navigate to be, which is boundary setting. In the martial arts endeavor or self-defense, boundary setting can logistically be, do I have enough space between this person who means me harm? Boundaries meaning, am I effectively using my voice to set up a boundary? Can I de-escalate a situation verbally and not have to go physical? And then boundaries, again, you're taking the same exact verbiage and throwing it into that advisory, And then last, a C, I like to call it like conflict resolution, right? So conflict resolution would be, kind of leading off the boundary, meaning verbally de-escalating situations, and I become an expert on speaking, right? How am I going to handle the situation? Am I going to underreact or overreact? Or am I going to handle it just right? And here's the one thing I always tell people, it's not just conflict resolution, it's /combat. Because in life, at some point, when the cause is just, you have to fight, right? You have to fight. And you have to fight with everything you have, right? So if the cause is just, it doesn't matter if it's 1,000,001 foes, right? And that's the premise. And when you start talking about, financial literacy and advisory, listen, people will say to me, money is not everything. And yes, of course, we know that. It's just one of the things that we need, right? The one quote that I like is, money solves all problems that not having money creates. So money solves all problems not having money creates. And I often think about that because when I was younger, you always hear, money's not everything, money's not everything. And once I heard that, I said, wow. So that kind of changed my whole mindset about it.
One thing that I want to talk about with you, and you touched on it, and I call micro skills like voice tonality, body language, how we stand, how we breathe, how we move, the pace at which we move. And I'm a big believer, and I teach this to my clients that I work with, is your identity drives your outcome. And people fail more often because they lack knowledge, or should I say, do people fail more often because they lack knowledge or because they don't see themselves as disciplined, capable individuals? In other words, they're emanating self-doubt.
So, okay, hear me on this. And this is so good because, here I am, 40 years in the martial arts, 57 years old, and I really think I did kind of have that a moment. I don't know if it's the confidence. I don't care if it's, I really don't care what people think. But at the end of the day, a lot of people talk in the martial arts like, I have to be honest with myself, right? I have to be truly honest with myself. I can look in the mirror and say, I know who I am. I know who I am. And that's my identity, right? So I would say in the martial arts world, I can clearly and confidently say I specialize in stand-up striking. If you want to learn how to be an effective stand-up striker, knees, elbows, kicks, punches, the whole thing, I'm your guy. And I feel that I'm pretty good at it. Now, can I do takedowns? Yes. Can I grapple? Yes. Can I fight with sticks, knives, shoot? I can do all of that. But if you ask me what I identify as an expert, identify as a stand-up striking coach, expert, whatever you want to say. And that's part of who you are, right? And that's your identity. And, or you could say you're a jack of all trades, which, come on, right? Yeah. So you got to pick something. Own that
one thing, right? You're a closer.
Own the one thing, right?
I like that. So year-end audit, right? I think most of the successful people that I read up on, this is a thing, right? As we close the year, what are 3 non-negotiables every adult should audit physically, financially, and mentally before setting goals for the next year?
So listen, these are things that I actually do, right? I'm not some guy on a podcast asking this question, right? Because you can ask 100 different people and they're going to bullshit you. They're going to tell you they do all these magical things, right? I can authentically tell you I break open the memo pad, take out my colored Sharpies and markers, and I go to town. And I'm very honest with myself. How did the year go? First of all, what was my best takeaway? Right? And you could define it. It doesn't have to be the number one, right? You could start with your 12 great things, narrow it down to 3, and then what was my one great takeaway. And, if you want to say, let's start with finances. Did you hit your goal or did you not hit your goal? Did you even have a goal? Did you have a number, right? And, especially with numbers, numbers don't lie. I put them on a paper. Did I hit it or did I not hit it? And so I will reassess where I am and take a true, honest assessment of where do I want to be next year? And what do I have to do to get there? When you talk about health, sometimes it's not just me thinking about it. It's sometimes picking up the phone. Hey, John, let's talk. Like, what do you think I can do? This is where I'm at. This is how I feel. What do you think I should be doing? And like, one day what'd you say to me? You're like, listen, man, you're not being overly authentic with yourself, because you really should be coming in at least 2 times a month for a re-checkup on the body. Let's do all this,
science we use,
all the therapy that you do. And you're right,
and
right?
Let me jump in. By the way, audience, I have to share this. So Anthony may be one of the toughest individuals. All these guys, whether they're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or mixed martial arts, he has been a kicking bag for 40 years. So I know you're wrong. Plenty of you out there have been kicked and hit by him, so he can also give it. But I have to tell you, I've taken care of more sore quads and bruised ribs that were near broken, because he is so committed to make sure his clients are getting a realistic experience that he literally donates his ribs to charity on a daily basis. So yes, the maintenance is necessary.
And it's funny, when you talk about identity, I just want to share this because I think it's important. Some people, they look at a lot of what I do as a little bit obsessive and whatnot. And I would say, I really am not obsessive. I love what I do, right? I love to be a financial advisor. I like to communicate with people. I like to help people. Same thing, the martial arts. But here's what I would tell you. I see a lot of financial advisors that are broke. And I said, I'm not going to be that guy. Because if I can't walk the walk, right? If I can't have my own plan in place, if I can't have my own financial success in place, how am I authentically going to go and help others? And same thing as a martial arts teacher. At 57, I try to be just as fit and strong and healthy as I've ever been. I don't want to be that guy, 57 and out of shape in front of people, telling them, how, you should be in shape, you should be doing this, and you should be doing that. You should be leading it by example, which is very, very important to me. And that goes back to identity. How do you want to identify?
Without doubt. I like that. So bringing that back, I've seen so many of your disciples, students over the years inside the Phoenix Way. The Phoenix Way is your martial arts academy, right? It's better part. You've been around it more years than you've not, right? And what core values do you teach inside those walls that adults outside the dojo desperately need, especially around discipline, self-control, and really where I think most breakdowns happen, confidence?
Well, I will tell you this, a few things. Discipline feeds the phoenix. That's like a theme with us. Discipline feeds the phoenix. If you don't have the discipline, it's very hard to see the phoenix fly, right? And, that's a hard reality. But I think the overall message is nothing is given, John. Nothing's given. Everything is earned. I will tee everything up for you. I will set you up for success. But, what's the old adage? I can't do your push-ups for you, right? And, you want to be me? Okay, then do what I do. And, well, you don't see what I do, because most of the time, like, John, think about what you and I do to be successful. People would, you're up at 4 o'clock in the morning. How many people are getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning? Maybe to pee, right? And, these are the things that, if success leaves clues, right? Success leaves clues. And you look at what other successful people do and go do what they do. You want to be successful, go talk to John, right? Talk to me. But most of the time, people don't really want to do what we do. And at the end of the day, there's not going to be many Johns, and there's not going to be many, Anthonys.
It's funny, the discipline path is definitely a road less traveled. A lot of people talk about discipline as an idea, as a fantasy land, but most people don't realize what it is to live there. When I chose this path to go into bodybuilding versus functional athletic training for basketball was my passion, much like martial arts was yours. I definitely didn't give it the respect it deserved, and it humbled me very quickly. And now I am a disciple, because I realized the discipline is all mental. That the work, the lifting, it's the easy work. It's the nutrition. It's the timing. It's the, hey, you want this? Hey, you want, no? You have a drink? No. Do you want one? Yeah. You can have one? No. Right? And being able to show up like that every day, and then it carries over, right? That's the one bucket, right? That's the bodybuilding, but that goes to the coaching, the martial arts, the financial advisory, the parenting, the husbanding or dating or whatever it is you're doing. And this is what I tell people. I'm like, look, discipline is like a running faucet. If you feed it, it'll fill all the buckets. But if you don't feed it, then it's something that you have to definitely moderate,
When you, you think about, what we do on a daily basis, right? And, listen, I see what you're doing, and I'm using, it's just you and us talking, right? Just you and I. And I know what it takes to do what you're doing as a bodybuilder. I mean, it's a discipline that very, very, very few will ever get to. But again, it's being able to roll out of bed in the morning, and you're not like saying to yourself, I don't want to get out of bed. Like every weekend when I know
Usually it's, can I get out of bed?
yeah. Can I get out of bed? I know. Sometimes after I train, I laugh. I said,
you're being aggressive there.
Yeah. I said, the other day we trained so hard. I was so sore and I was laughing. I was talking to one of my students. I'm like, oh my God, I hope I don't get jumped. I go, because I can barely move. Right. So, at the end of the day, it's, if you love what you do, it's not hard to get out of bed, man. It's not hard to say, I'm going to wake up at 4 today. And that's how I feel about teaching. That's how I feel about training. It's how I feel about going into my office every day. It's how I feel about turning on a TV and seeing how the markets are doing. When you enjoy what you do and authentically, and let me tell you, 100%. Exactly.
The thing is this, we have a really neat thing. When you strip it all down, training, money, discipline, and legacy, what is the deeper purpose behind becoming both physically strong and financially secure when you think about it? Because we talked about this earlier, right? Freedom, right?
Yeah, I would tell you this, when they say, money isn't everything, I do say that money has definitely gave me the opportunity to do what I want, when I want, how I want, right? It's on my own terms. And, no, money isn't everything, but it definitely has put me into a position to be comfortable where I don't worry, right? Because it was something that I always worried about. It. And, but I think that, to have that freedom creates a lot of opportunity. And the opportunity, listen, it's more than just buying new cars, right? It's, can I give my money away? Can I help other people? And when you start realizing that what may not be a lot of money to you is a lot of money to somebody else, you can have great impact and help other people.
I like it. I like what you're saying. Guys, I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to read something that really kind of resonated the conversation that I had with Anthony today. Here's the truth. Discipline builds strength. Strength builds confidence. Confidence builds wealth. And wealth without purpose is empty. Train your body, protect your mind, master your money, and show up like a warrior. That's tough love, guys. Thank you for joining us today. Anthony, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you.
It's always great, bro.
Happy holidays, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. God bless, and we'll see you guys again soon.